Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, last Friday, everyone was very excited to greet President Zelensky to Washington. Now, when I say everyone was excited, it was more that the media had whipped up this enthusiasm because there was this widespread anticipation that Trump was finally going to sign off on the decision to send to Ukraine the Tomahawk missiles, and there was all this excitement. Oh, goody! Finally, we're going to be lobbing missiles into Russia, hitting Moscow, and we've got the war that we've been dreaming about for a long time. And so that it was this meeting in Washington was supposed to seal the deal, but then something very untoward happened. Thursday early afternoon, Trump sent out a truth saying, "I'm in the middle of a phone call right now with President Putin," which itself was kind of amusing. He's having a phone call and he's sort of like a teenager sending
Just
out
give me a
messages.
second.
And then they had a lengthy 2.5 hour call, and following that call, he again sent out a truth saying, "Yeah, the call went really well. Next week, we have an American delegation led by Marco Rubio. We'll meet a Russian delegation, presumably it would be led by Sergei Lavrov, and then that will pave the way for a summit in Budapest, Hungary." And then the Russians kind of sent out their own
Yeah, but it
readout.
was much more conditional.
More condition, and they didn't. They say could be Budapest. They
Could
didn't
be,
say it was
might be.
categorical. Exactly. They didn't say that's right. Now, of course, as was to be expected, Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, was ecstatic, and has been talking nonstop since then. And to be fair, it is a vindication of his policy. So his international profile has now been raised. Hungary's international profile has now been raised. And if we recall, and we did some podcasts on this when he was when Hungary was the president of the EU Council, and he went off on this peace mission around the world. He went to Ukraine, he went to Moscow, he went to Beijing to see Xi Jinping, and then he went to see Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and he said, "All part of my peace mission." And so that says, yeah,
Think of all the Europeans that just strive to make some kind of splash, you know.
right,
And when you're president of France, it means something to somebody, doesn't mean anything to me.
right,
Macron has always been trying to be a world leader. And Victor Orban, I'm a little hungry.
little
Pulled it
hungry,
off. The only one, the only one.
right. That's right. That's right. And so obviously he was very happy. But interestingly, at the meeting on Monday, Sharm el Sheikh meeting in Egypt, which was to deal with the Gaza issue, was very well attended. Again, all the Europeans were there, but all the European heavyweights. But Viktor Orban was there, and he was only there because Trump had invited him. He had made a special point of inviting him to come to Sharm el Sheikh, and then Trump singled him out. "Oh, there's my good friend Victor. I know everybody doesn't like you, but I like you, and that's all that matters." And so
It's all that does. Yeah.
and this was, you could see the faces. Even Starmer, started laughing at that one. That no one likes you. But I like you, and that's what matters. But anyway, that was clearly preceded so. But of course, it does raise the question before we get on to the meeting with Zelensky, which is what we talked about this morning. Do you think that there is a risk for President Putin to travel to Hungary because he does have to cross NATO airspace?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm not for this. I'm against it.
Hmm.
Seychelles. Okay. I mean, go somewhere like that. Okay. Okay. Maldives. Okay.
Right.
I think it's too much travel. It's too much risk. Okay.
Right.
And it's not worth the potential payoff because I don't see any payoff at
Right.
all.
Uh,
I'm not I believe in dialogue, okay, but there is the assemble process that should be reignited, okay. Maybe that would be a place to go.
right.
Istanbul, use the adjacent room and have the two leaders talk. I think yeah, I'm happy for Hungary. I'm happy for Viktor Orban, but I don't think security-wise this was wise.
Um, I mean, I think there is a small, a distinctive risk, but nonetheless, I think it's a small risk because, um, I mean, Turkey is a member of NATO. Turkey is not a member of the International Criminal Court. Um, and Turkey hasn't imposed sanctions against Russia. Um, he would have to, I guess, I'm not sure exactly the air route, whether he would have to go through Greece or Montenegro. Greece and Montenegro may be more problematic. That they're both members of the ICC. Greece and Montenegro are also members of NATO. Um, Montenegro, however, is not a member of the EU, so the whole sanctions against Russian aircraft or space that doesn't apply as far as Montenegro is concerned. So I think um, it's a yeah, I mean it's a risk. But it's interesting. Why did they choose Hungary? They haven't quite explained why. I mean, I know they said, oh, because I like Viktor Orban and Viktor Orban likes me, and Trump Orban likes Putin, Putin likes Orban. I mean, yeah, we get that, and that's Trump's explanation. But it's still interesting. Why did they decide to do it in Hungary?
I just don't think it's the security risk is too high, but that's that's not our call,
No,
okay?
no, no,
But I
no.
mean, going back to George was giving the chronology, so there was the Trump call, and then the impending Zelensky visit, and then
That's right. Now, then, of course, becomes the very interesting because Zelensky then flew in. He actually flew in Thursday evening. So it was Thursday evening. Now, what was interesting about his arrival was that nobody came to meet him at the airport. Which is quite unusual for any. He's a president, not just a president. He was a president supposedly of a U.S., NATO, EU client state. We're supposed to be fighting an existential, civilizational values war on his behalf, and no one came to meet him at the airport. So they staged a kind of a meet and greet at the airport, but that was basically his own staff and the flight crew
the
who
flight
was
crew,
standing
yeah.
there, who was standing there, and he was shaking hands with them as if he was shaking hands with U.S. officials. So no one came to greet him, and then
And everybody, it went downhill from there.
exactly. So, and then right away, what was interesting, he didn't get a meeting at the Oval Office. Usually, the dignitary gets a meeting at the Oval. He didn't get an Oval Office meeting. He was led straight into the cabinet room, and then he had an array of U.S. officials sitting opposite him, with Trump obviously center stage, and then behind him were the journalists peppering the two of them with questions, but essentially peppering Trump. And let's just watch a little bit of that news conference, which was because there was some interesting aspects to it. Let's see. Okay.
You see what? Where are you from? From Ukraine. You actually had a conversation with me. Good, yeah. What if Mr. President Putin doesn't agree to peace in Hungary? What do you do then? Do you have? Well, let's see what happens. I mean, what if? I think he will. I think that President Putin wants to end the war, or I wouldn't be talking this way. I think he wants to end the war. I spoke to him yesterday for 2.5 hours. We went through a lot of details. He wants to get it ended.
I think that President Zelensky wants to get it ended. Now we have to get it done.
Mr. President,
Kara Noble from Lindell TV. And although I love asking you questions, today my question is for President Zelensky of
Sure.
Ukraine.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Our president, President Zelensky, President Trump, just brokered a peace deal in the Middle East that all Americans, both sides of the aisle, are very proud of.
Zelensky does not look happy.
He does not look happy. No, they not at all happy. No, he's
And the bald guy next to him is saying, I think we need to get out of here.
yeah, that's right. They know this is not going well.
Both sides have many questions. President has stuck out his neck in many ways to make a peace deal for your war as well. What specific concessions are you willing to make to end this war with Russia? Will you give up joining NATO? Americans have foreign war fatigue, and our president, as he said, we need our tomahawks too.
Now, notice what she's done here. This is very unusual. Now, she works for Lindell TV, and she asks a question that nobody ever asks. What concessions are you prepared to make? Are you prepared to give up on NATO membership? Nobody ever asks that. You know, the questions are always, hey, what are you going to do with Putin? Because if Putin says no, what's your next step? But she asked him, what concessions is Ukraine prepared to make? And then what's Trump's response to this question?
me.
Yes, you.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's some question. So many questions.
That's some question.
First of all, I think we need to sit and speak. The second point, we need ceasefire. Even now, you see in the Middle East, it's very difficult to hold ceasefire. Everywhere, in every war, it's very difficult. We want peace. Putin doesn't want. That's why we need pressure on him. We will speak with President today what we need. We understand what we need to push Putin to negotiation table. And as I said previously, so we are ready to speak in any kind of format, bilateral, trilateral, doesn't matter. Just peace. This is important. And we don't speak about NATO or NATO. For Ukrainians, it's very important. Of course, it's our decisions of allies to decide where we are.
But are you willing to give
Yes,
up
but
joining
the
NATO?
most important thing for people in Ukraine, which are under each day's attacks, to have really strong security guarantees. NATO is the best, but weapon is very important. Allies on our side is very important. And between us, for us, bilateral security guarantees between me and President Trump is very important. I don't know, we didn't speak with details about it, but this is the most important document because the United States is very strong.
Sir?
Now, everything he has just said is certainly not what Trump is saying. Because Trump's, as we'll see, Trump's thrust during this meeting is, well, we're not going to give you the tomahawks. Well, first of all, we need them ourselves, but that it is escalatory, and I don't want to escalate. And then, we've been down the path of the security guarantees already, and Trump has just always kind of pushed that whole matter to the side. But he keeps doing this. And so this really does raise the question because, we talked about this at Anchorage. Remember, we had the meeting at Anchorage, and then 2 days later, boom, Zelensky shows up in D.C. with all his NATO and EU minders. They all trooped in to see Trump, and they all had the same message. Yeah, great. Yeah, let's have peace with security guarantees. And they knew, of course, that NATO security guarantees would be unacceptable to Russia, and therefore there'll be no peace. And that goal was achieved. Now, you can't really do the same thing again. I mean, it's just simply, Trump, I think he's wise to the Europeans now. He's not going to allow them to come in again and start talking about security guarantees. So that's why I think it's quite interesting, this meeting, because the Europeans are now at a loss. They were not expecting Trump to pull this on them, and I mean, obviously they have things up their sleeve, drone hysteria, all the rest. I don't think they can do the security guarantee thing as they did after Anchorage.
Yeah, this is George is right. This is just recycling. Um, uh, uh, for Trump to keep people to his left and to his right appeased, he meets with Zelensky, but he's not. What Trump want, he doesn't want to get pulled in further.
Right.
Okay, that's for sure. He doesn't want to go up the escalation ladder because I'm pretty sure, and it's widely reported. Um, Putin made it very clear that if you send these tomahawks, which we're not particularly afraid of, but it shows your intent.
Right.
It's your intent
Yeah.
to go down that path and how it will affect our almost non-existing bilateral relationship. I think Trump took that to heart
Right.
because George and I have said from the get-go, Trump wants to have better relations with Russia. He needs to get this Ukraine mess off his
Right.
plate.
Right.
Okay, but he won't do it in a way where people are going to turn around and say, "You lost Ukraine." He's working a narrative. It's the Ukrainians and the Europeans lost this. I didn't do it. I
Right.
did everything
But
I could. I had him in Washington over and over and over again. It's not
Right.
like I didn't care.
Right. But I wonder whether, do you think really Trump really cares that much about it? Because after all, he repeatedly says, this is his theme, is he says it over and over again, it's not my war. And so therefore, if it's not your war, then what do you care how it's settled? I mean, I mean, it's not my war. I mean, I inherited it. I tried to resolve it. I mean, what do you want
I
from
think
me?
that's what he's doing right now.
Right, and I think that's what he really believes. I inherited this war. I think he really believes that he didn't
I
do
believe.
anything to start it, and I'm just trying to finish it. He doesn't care under what conditions it finishes, but he doesn't want to break with his NATO allies. So that's why he's trying to see if how we can just end this in a way that but he can work. I mean, after all, his NATO allies really they have a limited room to maneuver because he can always say to them, "Well, okay. I mean, you want to continue with this war, go ahead. I mean, include me out." So he still has the potential. I'm not saying he's going to do necessarily realize that potential. He has the potential. It's just simply saying, this is it. We're not going to do this anymore. After all, there is a reason why they didn't show up to meet him at the airport. They're sick of him. I mean, that's
Yes.
so. I mean, it's supposed to be an existential struggle on his behalf, and no one even shows up to meet him. So would at least be indication that Trump really wants this off his plate. He doesn't want to go on with it, and if he's meeting in Budapest, I mean, he has to expect that he's going to get something. I mean, it's like I mean, I don't think he's going to all the way to Budapest just in order to enjoy Hungarian cooking.
I want to believe this. Okay, this is one of the problems with the whole Ukraine project. I mean, there are things that are reality based, and then how you change that reality, and that's when you go into a little bit of the area of hope. My hope, George, is that after Anchorage, after these phone calls, Putin is impressed upon enough Trump to say, look, if we guarantees, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but whose security?
Right.
And you know what? I'm sure Putin's saying, yeah, Ukraine's a sovereign country. They need security guarantees. Germany needs security guarantees. Ireland needs security guarantees.
Right.
But my country needs them too.
Right.
Now, this is where we need to think big,
Yes.
big.
Right.
Okay. And if we can sit around the table, all of us, and say, look, nobody likes where we are. Nobody.
Right.
How can we fix this? Okay. But a ceasefire? No, we can't do that
No.
because we're
That's right.
compromising our security. See, this is why I said to you earlier with Mark, did we get anything from Anchorage? Yes, we got one thing. The Russians got without any filter, without Keith Kellogg and all these
Right.
other clowns, the Russians got to say, this is what we want.
Right.
Okay. Now, obviously Trump wasn't enamored by it, but it might have been like a cold shower, saying, okay, at least I know what these guys actually want right now. Because
Right.
Trump's all over the place factually about this conflict. He doesn't really know much about it.
No,
Okay.
no,
He's
no.
relying on too many people. So my point is, and again, this is where that hope interferes with being pragmatic. There's a way out, President
Right.
Trump.
Well, this is what I was thinking, that if at the meeting in Budapest, the Russians then revive the formula at Istanbul in the spring of 2022, which is mutual security guarantees, security guarantees by a number of powers, and there has to be a consensus among the guarantors that a violation of Ukrainian sovereignty has taken place. In other words, we move away from the idea of NATO security guarantees, which is clearly unacceptable to Russia. A number of powers will guarantee Ukrainian security. Russia, so this is the Russian proposal. And was at least acceptable. And Putin, I think, will press upon him. Hey, Ukraine accepted this in principle in the spring of 2022. Let's revive this. And the territorial issues. Okay, we can postpone that for another time. But that could be now. I don't see that Trump would necessarily say no to this. After all, if we can, what he did in Gaza was to bring in other powers. He's internationalized the conflict in Gaza. Now, of course, we don't know whether that's going to succeed. I mean, but at least Trump realized that the only way out of what happened in Gaza is to internationalize it, bring in Turkey, bring in Egypt, bring in Qatar. And therefore, there's at least a way forward, which is, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar, they restrain Hamas. Trump, will restrain Israel, and maybe we can get somewhere. If Trump can actually see that that could be a formula for success, then it's possible in principle that he might be amenable to some kind of a deal along those lines in Budapest. That's just a
Agree with
hope.
you.
It's a hope, not
No,
not.
I think it's a good theory of the case. I would even add to it, have it as a United Nations Security Council
Yeah.
resolution.
Yes.
Okay. I
Right.
mean that's I wouldn't say a concession, but it shows good faith on the
Right.
part of the Russians. Okay.
Right.
What to kind of distill a couple of things that George said that I think need stress is that NATO is not part of this process,
No,
everybody.
exactly. That's the key.
See, that's key. That's key.
Right.
NATO is not part of this process.
Right.
And that is something that the Russians will never agree to.
Right.
They will not. Okay.
Right.
They internationalize it, put it at the United Nations, and this thing could have some traction. I seriously believe that. Okay.
Right.
And
That's right.
again, I don't want to phrase it as a concession. I think it's a reframing the issue of security. I mean, it's on the one hand, this is just a godsend for George and I because we've been talking about this happened because of the lack of security. Now,
That's
if we can
right.
get back on that track,
Right. That's right. That's right. And that's the thing that Trump, I think, must have realized that what happened after Anchorage was a failure. I mean, Anchorage could have been a way forward, but then allowed NATO to get in on the act and then move it in a ridiculous direction. And it's clear that he is wary of what NATO's doing. The whole drone hysteria of 2 weeks ago. Trump really wasn't buying into any of that. I mean, he didn't accept this nonsense that every country was suddenly under attack from Russia. Amazing, Russia's now attacking every country in Europe. So they can't do the same thing. I mean, he'll go to Budapest. You can't. He's not going to have Merz and Macron and Starmer once again flying to Washington. Because they did it. That's already been done. You can't keep doing that. So that's why he can, see, look, this is a way forward. We can bring a number of countries in. And, I know we can get China involved. That might be a way at least of relieving some of the tension between the United States and China. So once you get a number, and why, and he could put it to the NATO powers. Well, wait. why are you against this? Why are you against
Well,
international?
he could even go further, and I think this is what he likes, is it goes to, it shows his vanity. He said, who are you in Europe can talk to Putin? I can. Can you?
Exactly.
No, you did that. You did that to yourself.
Right.
Okay. None of you stood up. Okay. And none of you seem to be interested in ending this thing. I
No,
do.
that's
That's the
right.
difference between me and Europe.
That's
You
right.
guys want this to continue. I don't.
That's right.
I think that really infuriates him.
That's right. That's right. Because and absolutely correct, because they showed no interest at all in ending this war. On the contrary, they want to continue it and continue it. And now we're pushing him with these Tomahawk missiles. And so he knows this. This is what they want. And only now they pretend, oh, we want peace, we want peace. There was no interest at all for 2 years in any kind of peace. Now, oh, suddenly, oh, we really we want an immediate ceasefire. Trump knows this, so that's why it's interesting whether he's going to decide to get rid of his ridiculous partners and move forward. And that's why it's interesting. Orban's role will be quite interesting, because Orban will definitely be pushing him that, hey, this is a real opportunity. This is the moment for peace. I mean, he's going to be there. So it's essentially he's going to be whispering in Trump's ear that this is the moment. We have to seize this moment. It's not going to come again.
I have a really strong feeling that Erdogan is going to attach himself
Right.
to Trump
Right.
to make sure the Keith Kellogg's and all these other
Right.
clowns
Right.
don't get to obstruct him. What's really interesting is that, first of all, we've already mentioned that the body language, the blow up in February. He doesn't like the Zelensky
No.
character at
No.
all.
No.
Okay, and he is essentially. There's an adoption process going on. The Europeans, you adopt this guy. You like him so much, okay? But then at the same time, Trump is saying to the Europeans, I'm going to take care of this because you guys are a bag of what? You
Yes.
know what, okay?
Right.
And
That's
so
right.
he's pushing them all away, okay?
Right.
Now, this is very, very risky. I may be completely wrong. I love being proven wrong on these things, but you know what? As you and I have said almost from the very beginning, if you go big Donald Trump, you can get something from,
That's
because
right.
how are the Germans going to say and the French going to say, no, we don't want security for all? You can't make that
Right.
argument.
No, you can't.
Okay.
You can't.
Oh, but that's rewarding the Russians. Well, the Russians have just as much right to security as you do. You don't have to like the country. Okay.
Right.
That's why you actually have security degrees, guarantees, because if you hate another country, there's at least one thing that stops you from going to war. That's what they're for.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I think he understands it. I mean, he has said in the past that it was NATO expansion that caused this war. He knows this, so he understands that. And so, therefore, when Putin tells him, this whole security guarantees, that's not going to be acceptable to us, because that's just simply NATO membership by the back door. We're not stupid. We know exactly what's going on here. So you got to think of something different. And I think Trump was going to say, yeah, we've talked about this. It's failed. And I think we got to start thinking of some new solution. And Merz and Macron are really don't have a solution. So anyway,
Well,
let's just
but it's really interesting, isn't it? And I believe Trump is very frustrated by this. I believe that, okay? But through all of these meetings with the Europeans, with Zelensky, Trump knows it's going nowhere.
that's
It's
right.
going nowhere.
Right.
They're trying to pull me along by my
Right.
nose, and I know it,
Right.
okay? Now, the guy you all hate, at least I can sit down and talk to this guy. I
Right.
can talk to him for 2.5 hours.
Yep.
I mean, if I can communicate with him on a
Right.
normal basis and listen to his side of the story, then I'm going to be the intermediary. You guys just shove off,
That's
okay?
right.
Because
That's right.
you don't want to solve it. I will solve it. And you know what? I will solve it on my terms, and you will follow.
That's right. That's exactly what I think he thinks.
Will it work? I don't know. I don't know.
So I think that's probably what he thinks. Yeah, I talked to him for 2.5 hours, and I've had a number of. I think there's 7 conversations I've had.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, at least 7. And this will be their second meeting, none of which incidentally took place during the Biden years. So he's begun this dialogue. Um, but as you said, he realizes this is going nowhere. If we do that, we go through the same routine. Oh, we're going to have the meeting in Budapest, and then Starmer and company fly to DC with Ursula in tow, and that's it. Once again, we're going nowhere, and that's right. And then time is running out. I mean, he knows time is already running out.
Well, and also everyone.
Already a year since he's been president. So yeah, go.
George and I will talk about Gaza tomorrow, okay? But I think from Trump's perspective, and again, I'm going to stress his perspective, he's on a winning streak right now.
Right.
And he thinks that he can capture this moment. In his mind, this may work, okay? But again, I hope, understands that the people like Keith Kellogg, that NATO is the answer to everything. Right. That is, he doesn't really care about NATO. He thinks that they're all a bunch of freeloaders. In a way, they really are, but that's the way it was designed, everyone. That was by design, okay?
Right.
He doesn't feel that he has to adhere to that orthodoxy, okay? Right. And lastly, it may seem kind of just theatrical, but he did say he would end it, okay?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He definitely said that. He definitely said that. And what is interesting is, and this is unusual for an American president, is that he insists on peace. I mean, he's the peace president. I'm someone who brings wars to an end. Now, we can obviously poke holes in all of his claims, whether he really ended any of these wars, but nonetheless, it's interesting that he wants this claim. He wants to be the peace president. He wants to end wars. And so he boasts, oh, I ended the war in Gaza. He says that. So he says, I want to end this. I said I was going to end it. I want to end it. And I think that itself is a very interesting, that this is something that this is a goal he has set himself. He could have easily set himself some other goals. He said, oh, I just want to be America to be, the dominant power in the world. And I don't care whom I hurt. And to a certain extent, he does that when it comes to Maduro, and we talked about that. But he wants to end wars, and so that. I think
and he wants to end Biden's war, and he wants to end the Democrats' war.
Yeah.
That's where it gets personal. Ukraine is not even a place on a map for Donald. He doesn't care.
No.
But the Democrats. And Russia. So much of Russiagate all of it came from the Democrats, but also with Ukraine. This is a thorn, and this is something that it eats away at him right now. Is that I'm in this mess because of those people?
Exactly.
He wants to show his superiority to
that's a very good point, and that's the thing. He inherited a war. Now that's the thing, that when you inherit a war, and they're very difficult to end, as Richard Nixon found. They're very, very difficult. You can say, yeah, it's Kennedy and Johnson's war, but now you've inherited it, and you have got to make the decisions to end it. And it's not at all easy to end. You have to try one thing, you have to try something else, try all sorts of things, but you can't keep doing the same thing. And I think Trump realized that, as Nixon did, you can't keep doing the same thing. That's not going. If something hasn't worked, then you've got to try something new. And that's why I think Trump has a certain can-do ingenuity that would lead him to maybe do something new. But it may not work out. I mean, we're trying to be optimistic here, but at least he is thinking of how this can be brought to an end, and delivering more and more weapons. I think he realizes that's not going to get us anywhere.
The thing is that for him to succeed in this endeavor, and George and I have gone over it in this podcast, he has to reframe it. Okay, it's not weapons.
Yeah.
It's not the preservation of the current regime in Kiev. He has to walk away from that. Who rules in Kiev? in the way I'm framing it for Trump, I don't care who
Right.
rules in Kiev.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything to us. It doesn't mean anything to this administration.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What
Exactly.
the Europeans want, well, their vision of security is just the opposite. It continues insecurity, and
Yeah, absolutely.
because of that
Yeah,
insecurity, we go up the escalation
that's
ladder.
it. That's
Trump
exactly
has
it.
to do it, rephrase the entire thing,
That's
and
exactly
it
it.
is it is doable. It's doable.
That's right. That's a European thing. They wanted that thing. They want that the Tomahawk missiles because once they can get the Tomahawk missiles, then essentially you've crossed the Rubicon, and there's no going back after that. And that's why they were so excited about this. And and then once he sends the Tomahawks, then Merz sends the Taurus, and that's it. We've got our full blown war, and then there's nothing. There's no real way
Well,
back.
I think George may be proven very prescient because we had a very interesting conversation. I think it was on Friday. Is that it's most it's not probable. It is no, it's likely, but even more than I'm trying to get likely and probable. Anyway, I truly believe that there are those that are planning a preemptive war on Russia.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's it. That's it. That's exactly right. Anyway, so anyway, the news conference then
Yeah.
went on for a little bit more. Um,
Just never know with war and peace, but you never know. Please.
It continues using similar cruise missiles like Caliber and
Yeah.
even
Who are you with? Who are you with?
Ukraine.
You're Ukraine?
Yeah. But Russia continued even using the cruise missiles and also nuclear capable ballistic missiles in Ukraine since 2022. So do you consider providing Ukraine with the Tomahawk or similar missiles as an opportunity to equalize the possibilities of Ukraine and Russia and push Moscow to the negotiation table?
We're going to be talking about that. That's why we're here. Okay. Fair question.
He's not giving any details.
Nobody said exactly as he told you to say it. In other words, he's saying this Ukrainian journalist is basically asking the question that Zelensky had told him to ask. It's like it doesn't show a great deal of respect for the Ukrainians.
Talking. Not this.
Let's go to
He didn't take that one.
India and Hungary.
Interesting combination.
Refuse to stop buying Russian oil.
Well, India is not going to be buying Russian oil anymore. And Hungary is sort of stuck because they have one pipeline that's been there for years and years and years, and they're inland. They don't have sea. They don't have sea. And I spoke with the very great leader of Hungary, and they are, it's very hard for them to get oil. I understand it. Hungary's in a very interesting position because they can't have ports. They're surrounded.
Because they don't have access to the sea.
That's right. They don't have access. They don't have ports.
They can't have ports.
They used to have a navy, but that was in the
That was when they were
Austro-Hungarian
part-
Empire days.
That's right. Admiral Horthy without
Admiral Horthy, exactly. Admiral without a navy. Yeah.
Oh, Zelensky, poor puppy. At least
he's
he put
looking very unhappy.
Job, I think, in bringing it to the fore.
Look at
20,000, and some people say it's 300. There's a big difference between that, so nobody really knows. But she felt very strongly about the children. She thinks about the children all the time.
So if you okay Tomahawks to Ukraine, what's going to happen if the United States is in a conflict and we need the Tomahawks?
Well, that's the problem. We need Tomahawks, and we need a lot of other things that we've been sending over the last 4 years to Ukraine. We've been,
Peter Dorsey. He's representing MAGA here, everyone.
That's right. This is the moment when Zelensky puts forward this plan to provide drones to the United States. Hey, we're going to help you build drones.
situation with send it to the European Union. They pay for it and all that, and they have plenty of money. But it's beyond the money. We need Tomahawks, and we need a lot of other weapons that we're sending to Ukraine. One of the reasons we want to get this war over is exactly that. It's not easy for us to give. You're talking about massive numbers of very powerful weapons. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about. Hopefully they won't need it. Hopefully we'll be able to get the war over with without thinking about Tomahawks. I think we're fairly close to that. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I say,
Yeah, please.
just you to understand. So for today, of course, we want to finish this war, but the war is another technological war. You don't use just Tomahawks. If you want to targeting military goal, you need thousands of drones. It goes together with such missiles. Ukraine has such thousands of our production drones, but we don't have Tomahawks. That's why we need Tomahawks. But the United States
Tomahawks.
is a very strong production. And the United States has Tomahawks and other missiles, very strong missiles. But they can have our thousands of drones. That's why where we can work together, where we can strengthen America.
He just stepped in it big time.
Yes.
Suggesting kind of
Trump doesn't like that kind of thing.
No.
Only America makes great drones.
Exactly.
Yes, it's about military goals. It's only about military goals.
Right, but then you would authorize some kind of an exchange.
Yes, of course.
US
Yes, we have proposition. We have great proposition with our drones.
President
Peter Dorsey backing up his man,
Yes.
President Trump.
We are, yeah. We would. We have a lot of drones right now. We build our own drones, but we also buy drones from others, and they make a very good drone. I mean, drone warfare has really come to the fore over the last couple of years because of this war. I will say, there's nothing like the jets. We knocked out a lot of drones.
So, but this also was very, very interesting because, I mean, it's not on this particular footage, but when he started talking about this exchange of drones for Tomahawks, Trump and J.D. Vance kind of exchanged smiles. They did this whole thing is so ridiculous that we're gonna do this trade. Oh, you'll provide us with drones and we'll provide you with Tomahawk. But
Yeah,
it was just
it's like,
funny. They kind of exchanged
I'll
these.
give you an H-bomb, but I have the best matches in the world. Okay.
They never went, but Trump is going out of his way to be as nice as possible. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He doesn't like that, the idea that somebody else, or we have more advanced drone technology than you have. No. No one has anything more advanced than the Americans.
Trump didn't use the words, but he implied it. You have no cards.
Yes, exactly. But he's going out of his way. We're not going to do the February thing. So he's going out of his way.
You will get your lunch. Don't worry.
That's right. There'll be lunch served. So, there's another one here. Let's see. One more kind of amusing moment.
We can tell the foreign women as opposed to the American women. I'll leave it at that.
Yes. That one from Lindell TV, she's a real looker. She was the one who actually asked the best question, what to Zelensky.
Said yesterday that the threat of Tomahawks and costs, as Secretary Nixon put it, is that bringing him to the table? The fact that it's kind of a carrot and stick?
I don't know what's bringing him to. I think he wants to make a deal. That's all. I can't tell you what's bringing him. Sure, that's the threat of that is good, but the threat of that is always there. Tomahawks are very dangerous weapons. They're incredible weapons. If you like.
Zelensky, no Tomahawks for you.
Exactly.
You had 30 Tomahawks. And
That's right.
After the B-2s did their damage, we sort of gave it a little.
Oh, he's seething. He's seething.
Yes, that's right.
They're an amazing weapon. They're a very powerful weapon.
But there was also a moment later on when Dmitriev, who you remember, he came up with this idea of building a tunnel to link Alaska with Russia, and this was Dmitriev, and he proposed that Elon Musk build this tunnel, and then Trump was asked, "Hey, what do you think of this tunnel idea?" So, well, I just heard about it. Interesting. And then he turns to Zelensky, "What do you think of this idea?" So he goes, "I don't like it." No, I didn't think you would. I didn't think you would.
Yeah, but Trump is Trump, and people will be talking about him for decades after he leaves, really. But you know, what do you think of the tunnel? See, Trump's thinking about that kind of that. Now that's interesting. This guy sitting across from me,
Yep.
that I don't know who his costume designer is, but he doesn't like him. He doesn't like this problem.
Right.
And if someone says, "Why don't we build a tunnel
Yes.
under the water, connect to Russia?" We're
That's-
right next to each other. We don't have any contact.
That's
Yeah, that sounds that they'll call it the Trump tunnel. Yay!
right. The Trump
That's
tunnel.
how he thinks. He thinks, and he's he's a mega thinker about mega things. Okay.
Right.
That's how he thinks about everything.
That's exactly right. And so for him, you think, hey, this is a great idea. No one's done this. We got a tunnel. People have been talking about this for some time. You build a tunnel. It'd be great for trade. It's going to link Russia to the United States, Canada, and so on. You think, what a fantastic idea. He's going to say, how much is it going to cost? And then Dmitriev says, yeah, it's got to be. We can do it pretty cheaply. I mean, it's not going to cost that much. And you're
I
right.
think 62 billion was
Something
that?
like that. He said, yeah, I'm sure Musk would be able to work out a good price. And yeah, you're absolutely right. This is the way Trump thinks. He's a builder. He's somebody who's a doer. He kind of he wants to do things. And this war to him is just stupid. It's just simply a stupid waste of life. And he wants to get it out of the way. And you're right. To him, that's interesting. Zelensky is not interesting. He comes there, with his begging bowl. So we've been through this before. How many times are you going to keep coming in here demanding for this and this and this from me? It was last time it was the security guarantees. Now it's the tomahawks. It's going to be always going to be something that I have to provide.
And I think judging how Trump deals with the press, he is sick and tired of the press wanting to push him to continue the war.
Right.
Okay, because he sees them in cahoots. They're all in cahoots.
Yep.
And you could see the Zelensky looking at the Ukrainian journalist like, well, that didn't work. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That didn't work.
That didn't
Okay.
work.
I mean, but that's how and I think that gets his back, he gets his back straight. It's just like, hey, here's this clown
Right.
that everyone is fawning over.
Right.
He's a client.
Right.
He has no interest in saving his own people. His
Right.
own people.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right.
And probably, and I'm going to add to it, probably Trump thinks that all he wants is a bread ticket. It's worked out for him pretty well so far. We'll keep it going.
That's it. That's exactly right. And so after this meeting, and this was one was quite interesting. This one really went badly. I mean, this was, everyone thought that whole February, that's all in the past. Yeah, there wasn't a blow up, but it clearly had gone badly. And there was Axios, first out of the gate saying, hey, this was not a good meeting. And this is their Barak Ravid. And as I think we agree, Axios is they have very good contacts. And so here's the headline, which is Trump rejects Zelensky on Tomahawk missiles in tough meeting. And then it says, well, tense meeting that he doesn't intend to provide the long-range missiles. But it says Zelensky hoped to leave Washington with commitments around new weapons for Ukraine, but found Trump in a totally different state of mind a day after he had a lengthy call with Putin. Trump made clear his priority now is diplomacy, and he thinks providing tomahawks could undermine it. That's right. But it was also interesting that he didn't provide anything. I mean, there was nothing. It's not like, he comes and at least, well, no tomahawks, but something else. Trump gave him nothing. At least he got a lunch. I guess last time he didn't even get a lunch, but he got something. It said one of the sources said the meeting was not easy, while the other simply said it was bad. Nobody shouted, but Trump was tough. According to the first source, Trump gave several strong statements during the meeting, and at some points it got a bit emotional. The meeting ended abruptly after 2.5 hours. I think we're done. Let's see what happens next week, Trump said, referring to a planned talks about US-Russia. And then he says, he stressed that the current US proposal for a diplomatic solution is for the war to end with the front lines frozen in place, which is said, but it depends on what else. I mean, if we can talk about security guarantees, and I mean, then that wouldn't be so important.
Yeah, everybody keep in mind, and this is one of the great deceptions of how this Ukraine project is reported in the West. It's not about land.
Exactly.
This conflict has nothing to do about land.
Exactly. That's the point, and that's why people miss they miss that point. That it's it's about land, and somebody.
Well, no, okay. What did George and I? What do we mean? Okay, we've talked about pan-European security guarantees for all countries.
Right.
Have it codified by the United Nations Security Council. Okay,
Right.
and that means Ukraine will be neutral.
Yeah.
Okay, that will neutralize the
Right.
NATO expansion issue.
Right.
That is very important. What are what will be the lines in Zaporozhye and Kherson? It's beyond the point. I mean, basically, who cares?
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly
Now,
right.
now, if all of those things can be agreed to, and some other points we can go into later, then you can get your ceasefire or something like it.
That's right. That's exactly it. It's not. It isn't about land, and that's why the people, some of whom, we sometimes have respect for, who talk about a land for peace. So they're going to have a land for peace agreement. It's not. This isn't a land for peace. This isn't the way the Middle East. It's not like the Middle East crisis with Israel and the Palestinians. That involves land. This doesn't involve land. Russia has plenty of land. I mean, it doesn't need any additional land. It's got plenty of resources. It's a resource-rich country. Agricultural land. It's got plenty of everything. What it doesn't have is security, and that's been a long bane of Russian history, that it's very vulnerable to attack, and has been attacked
from the West.
From the West, and that's the key. As far as the Putin is concerned, and Trump, maybe he seems to understand this, that's the issue that you have to resolve, not this whole territorial issue, but that issue of security. And then and I think maybe Trump does get it. I mean, they're talking about something when he has these conversations with Putin. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. That's a long conversation. But these conversations with Zelensky are pointless. I mean, clearly that Trump thinks that they are pointless conversations, and they're not getting us anywhere. Nothing that Zelensky is suggesting is getting anywhere.
Well, and I think it's fair to assume that Trump had a 2.5 hour conversation with Putin, and it looks like he had like a 2.5 hour encounter with Zelensky.
Right.
I think it's safe to assume that Trump thought he got more out of the
Yes, I think so.
Putin call than he did with the Zelensky circus in town.
That's right. And that's 2.5 hours with everybody else joining in. So
yeah,
that's right. And then he says Zelensky, meanwhile, held a conference call with European leaders immediately after the Trump meeting.
There you go. Yep.
And then several of them seemed puzzled about Trump's apparent change of heart. They shouldn't have been. You see, I'm sure they were puzzled. They shouldn't have been.
We thought the fix was in.
We thought the fix was in, even though, and we talked about, what Trump said about the tomahawks, and I think we were always a little skeptical that was actually going to happen. He kind of talked about it in a very playful way, as is his wont. Yeah, maybe I'll give them the tomahawks. See what Vladimir thinks about that.
But he was talking with Malay. Malay said, "Do you need some tomahawks?"
That's right, exactly. Do you need some tomahawks? And then soon after, the leaders started putting out coordinated statements in support for Ukraine, a clear indication that the meeting with Trump was not a success. And And then it says, then he goes on, when asked if he was optimistic about the Tomahawks, Zelensky said, I'm realistic.
Well, maybe that's two words of realism from this
That's
guy.
right. And then this says, in reality, the
Okay,
sources.
in reality, the sources said Zelensky pushed hard on Tomahawks, but Trump pushed back and showed no flexibility. No, in reality, I would completely rephrase that because I don't think that's true. In reality, Zelensky's attempt to escalate the conflict
Right.
fell flat with Trump.
That's right.
That's what in reality should be.
That's right. It was also interesting that Keith Kellogg wasn't there. Or at least I didn't see him at the table. And Kellogg really, I just don't understand why Trump just doesn't get rid of Kellogg. I mean, Kellogg seems to be completely a useless person. He doesn't really have any role other than shooting his mouth off and making idiotic statements on television. And then it says, during Zelensky's call with European leaders, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer proposed working with the US to draft peace for Ukraine along the lines of Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza.
Oh, yeah.
That should be good. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte proposed an urgent follow-up call between European national security advisors over the weekend. So they were all working the phones.
Surprise, surprise. Okay. Because, you know what this is doing? Again, I don't know how much of this, Trump is exposed to, but there seems to be two sides in this conflict.
Right.
Ukraine, the Europeans on one side,
Right.
and the Americans and the Russians on another side.
Right. That's right.
And Mark Rutte of daddy fame is creating that division even more and more.
That's right. That's it. That's exactly. And then Zelensky's number one priority from the visit was to get commitments from Trump, not just on Tomahawks, but on a variety of weapon systems Ukraine wishes to obtain. Trump offered no such commitments. That's not a good meeting. If you're not even
It's
going
not
to
a
get
good meeting,
anything
and
on
the bottom
other
line
weapon
is
systems.
the bottom line is Zelensky didn't get a commitment to escalate the conflict
Exactly.
against Russia. That's, I don't like this, what it means in
Oh, yeah.
reality. I don't like
stuff.
that at all. It really irritates me. But or maybe it has a pedagogical purpose in the end because I disagree with their assessment.
Right. Yeah, but
Axios, I don't know. These guys got some really good intel sometimes.
exactly. That's right. It's a pretty good publication. Just if you want to know what the insiders are saying, then Axios is a pretty good source. I mean, obviously, it's a kind of Washington liberal consensus, but they do have interesting information. So here's Bundeskanzler Friedrich Merz, the second worst German chancellor in history. President Zelensky has the full support of Germany and the European friends on the way to peace. On the way to peace.
And Trump knows that.
Exactly. After his meeting with President Trump, we have coordinated and will accompany the next steps. Well, it depends on whether you're going to get another invite to the White House. I don't think you're going to get another invite.
Why?
Now Ukraine needs a peace plan.
Yeah, well, Trump has plenty of people that can shine his shoes. Okay,
yes, so. Exactly. Now peace plan. That's it. Now they've got a peace plan, and then we have Keir Starmer. Productive calls this evening with Zelensky, other European leaders, and Secretary General NATO. It's very interesting. They were all up. This is Friday evening, so I mean by European time. So they were all sitting waiting by the phones Friday evening. I mean they don't have any any social commitments. They were waiting for Zelensky to call them after the meeting was over. I reiterated our unwavering commitment to Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. The UK will continue to send humanitarian aid and military support. Good. Keep it up. We must see a just and lasting peace.
Has Starmer talked about those teenage boys and his former residence recently? Okay. I'm just a dogged reporter, okay?
That's exactly, yes. Alexander Stubb, who's kind of elevated himself. It's very interesting. Finland is now becoming one of the most belligerent states in Europe. It was not so long ago that we only associated Finland with its great middle distance runners. Finland. What do you know about Finland? Oh, I have this Pavel Nurmi and then Lasse Viren. It used to be really great middle distance runners. Now suddenly Finland is one of these really aggressive states in Europe. It started with the Finchick, and now it's this Alexander Stubb. Just finished a call with Zelensky and European leaders. They look at. They have the same formula. We stand firm in our support to Ukraine. This entails military and financial aid, security guarantees, a ceasefire, and a peace progress. This is guaranteed for nothing. Military and financial aid, security guarantees, a ceasefire, and a peace process. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think Finland is going to start being known for banalities. Okay.
Yes. Work continues. Nobody wants to see this war end more than the Ukrainians do.
Yeah, but do the Europeans want this war? Yeah.
Exactly. And then Antonio Costa, he's the head honcho. I think the president of the council, the European Council. Yeah. He has the job that Tusk had a call with Zelensky and European leaders following his meeting with President Trump. Our shared goal remains the same, remains a just and lasting peace of Ukraine. Military, financial, and diplomatic support, as well as security guarantees, are essential to achieving it. We will continue working closely with our partners toward that end. But you notice Trump hasn't said any of those things. None of all these things they keep repeating. Every single one of them has the same script. Trump hasn't said any of those. Never mentioned.
Like I said, everybody. Guarantees. The Europeans and the Ukrainians, the Russians and the Americans.
Right. At next week's EU whatever meeting, we will
whatever.
I don't know, whatever.
I think that's coordinating committee or something like that.
Is that what it is? Okay, that's nice. We will discuss concrete steps to reinforce our support and increase pressure on Russia in pursuit of peace. So we're going to put the pressure, because nobody ever thought of this. Nobody has thought that this might be, wow, we just came up with this idea just now.
I wonder if his wife, oh, darling, what an original tweet. Oh, it's going to get a lot of people.
Let's increase pressure on Russia. Nobody had thought of that before. Wow. God, I mean, ingenious, these things. And then Tusk. After President Zelensky's talks yesterday in the White House and with European leaders, one thing is absolutely clear. Europe's solidarity with Ukraine against Russia's aggression is today more important than ever before. So that was the European response. But they have a problem on their hands, which is this summit in Budapest, and they know they can't do what they did after Anchorage. They have to come up with some new trick. Yeah, they gotta think of some new thing. They can't just they can't troop off to see Trump yet again. Now, I mean, they obviously the familiar false flag attacks, drones, chemical weapons. Where they can try all these things.
Well, see what's happening here, and this is the fault of the Europeans, is that Trump, and probably with good reason, he's seeing that there's only one partner in all of this, and it's the Russians.
Right.
See, that's what they're creating.
Yeah.
The White House, they're looking at these tweets from these clowns in Europe and say they don't get it.
Yes.
They don't get it.
They
don't get it, and it's absolutely true. They don't get it.
That's exactly right. I think that you're absolutely right. I think that's how Trump, realizes that the road to peace lies through Moscow. That's the only way you're going to get peace. You're going to have to work with Moscow. Talking to these Europeans, that's not going to get you anywhere. And he knows this isn't getting us anywhere. And this whole thing, if we send in more weapons we tried that. That hasn't worked.
We send weapons and weapons and weapons, exactly. And they're losing and losing and they're losing.
That's right. That's why he keeps talking about this. 300 billion.
I don't know.
500 billion or whatever. He just makes these numbers up. But the point is, we sent all these weapons and they haven't delivered what they're supposed to deliver.
I don't know if I saw it in a couple of places, but I didn't see Axios or anyone cover it, is that the Zelensky crew was proposing a new offensive. I don't know if you saw that, okay?
Um,
Um, and it was, obviously, I think that, that Trump probably thinks you guys are nuts, okay?
right.
But that was I saw that in a couple of places at antiwar.com. And then this is exactly what the Europeans want. Maybe that's why they're the ones that
But
put it into
they're
Zelensky's
absolutely
ears. They talk about an offensive. He likes to fight. He likes to win.
that's right. They want an offensive,
No,
and
no, I was just going to say, beside the security problem of the summit itself, this is a brilliant Russian statecraft.
yeah. Yes, I think so.
Okay,
I
it's
mean,
unstable, like, a little
it's a little
unstable.
unstable. Yeah. No, I think so. I think that um, I think this Budapest summit will be quite interesting, and interesting precisely because it's in Budapest, and therefore in
Well, and also, George,
because it's there in the home of the man most associated with trying to bring this thing to an end. It's not just, well, let's do it, some in some neutral corner. It's in the backyard of Viktor Orban, who's been absolutely obsessed really from the beginning of bringing this war to an end. So the fact that he's there, he's going to be he's going to be welcoming everyone, and he's going to be pushing both sides to come to some kind of an agreement. That's why I think that something may well come out of this.
Again, George and I never prep for these things together. I absolutely agree with George. Why? Because of Anchorage. If this could be a success because of Anchorage,
Right.
because then we had like school children, the Europeans, and the White House, and all of this. And now I hope the administration sees the lay of the land. They say who is who, what is what, and now Trump's going to say what we've been doing, and what Anchorage can, I think, has convinced some people around Trump that what we're doing is getting us nowhere. That's why this summit actually could be meaningful because they know what doesn't work.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think both sides, both Putin and Trump, are going to elevate the role of Orban, and Orban will be absolutely pushing it and saying, this is a moment, we got to resolve this now. So the fact that he's so actively engaged in this, and he's been attacking NATO and attacking the EU relentlessly for this 3.5 years, he's going to be there, and he's going to be absolutely pushing everybody to try to come to some kind of a settlement. And I think that's why I think it's so important that it's in Budapest.
Does Orban get any brownie points from Hungarians for his role in all of this?
Well, maybe. I mean, I think it will probably help him, but probably not as much as it should, because Hungarians, like everyone else, they're mostly preoccupied with domestic issues. I mean, the number of people who are, think like us, about international affairs is always very limited. But on the other hand, I mean, you'd have to say he's elevated Hungary in a way that no one could have imagined.
Well,
Hungary
George,
would be the central world attention.
even if Orban's political career comes to an end for one reason or another after the summit, he will be the best well-known Hungarian prime minister ever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In the world, at least.
I think he'll be up there with the famous Hungarian political figures, Andrássy and figures from the 19th century. I think he'll be up there with them, because he's been a diplomat and peacemaker, and he says Hungary has shown that. I think the way he puts it, we are an island of peace. This is where peace comes to be settled. So it's very. I think it's a very interesting choice. It's the fact that both of them decided on this, and he does have good relations with both sides. And the Russians have always pointedly singled him out. Yeah, we despise the Europeans with the exception of Viktor Orban and Robert Fico. They single them out. So the fact that he's there is going to be pushing both sides. I think it's very, very interesting, and that Trump realizes this. Trump knew that the significance of this, and that he invited him when there was no real reason for him to be at Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt on Monday.
I know that we're going to talk about, because we have time before the summit. During this day, I talked to you and Mark earlier today, and during the day, I thought a lot about what we talked about this morning, and I think I was a little bit more dismissive in the morning than I am right now, because if there is a reframing of this without making major concessions on both sides, frankly, I guess, but the reframing of it through security for all, I think that's a winning ticket.
Yep, I think so. I think that's going to be the key. I think that's going to be the message. We can work out something, the security for all, security guarantees. They said, and the Russians have said this. I mean, no one wants to listen, but they said, Ukraine should have security guarantees, but they have to be security guarantees in such a way that they don't threaten our security. The NATO plan is directly a threat to our security. That's not a security guarantee. That's an insecurity guarantee. And I think I think Trump could well just get this message and realize that the NATO formula is a formula for continued war.
For those watching my program, George just gave me the title for the Tuesday we're going, Insecurity Guarantees.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'll try to put a little asterisk and say George told me this. Okay. It's a good title. All righty, everybody. This is our wrap for Sunday. Obviously, we're going to be thinking about this and talking about this as the summit approaches. But this is a real opportunity. I actually feel a lot better about this than I did initially, because I even told George, it's just like, another one, the same thing. We go chase our tail, chase our tail. This is an opportunity. Let's just hope it's not squandered.
Exactly.
Really.
Exactly. Tomorrow.
All right.
Yep.
I was going to say, this is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. On Monday, tomorrow, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, George can take it from there.
Exactly. 10 o'clock Eastern Time, live stream, our weekly joint live stream. And then there's this awkward situation with the dogs who have been extremely irate and perturbed. And they really, they said they've had it. We've had it. They keep talking about tip jar. People are not listening, and they say, we're getting tired of just talking and nobody listening to us. So we got to emphasize the tip jar problem and the dogs' response to the tip jar problem, and it's not a good response. So whatever you've got. Anywhere lying around, not doing anything, these big sums of money, not doing anything into the tip jar. Bank account is, you just transfer whatever is in your bank account straight into the tip jar. That's also welcome. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we get the dogs into a bit of a better mood. It seems such a long time ago since they were in a good mood. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.